Day one stood in the grand chamber of Nexus Prime, watching the council members seated above him like gods judging mortals. The chamber walls glowed with strange lights, and the air smelled of chemicals he couldn't name. Around him stood other human representatives, their faces tight with worry. They all knew what was coming. Overseer Vexler rose from his throne, his scaled body reflecting the chamber's light. His four eyes looked down at the humans with something that might have been pity, or might have been disgust. When he spoke, his voice echoed through translation devices built into the walls. Humanity, Vexler said slowly, has exhausted its usefulness to this council. Your worlds consume more resources than they produce. Your people multiply without control. Your technology remains primitive despite our guidance. We've decided to relocate your species to the Outer Rim. Day one felt his stomach drop. The Outer Rim. Everyone knew what that meant. It was the edge of known space, where stars died and planets cracked apart. The council sent their criminals there to die slowly. Now they were sending all of humanity. You have 6 months, Vexler continued. Gather your people and leave the core worlds. We are being generous. We could simply eliminate you, but we are not monsters. The Outer Rim will be your new home. One of the other human representatives, a woman named Hannah, stepped forward. She was young, maybe 30, with grease still under her fingernails from working in the engine rooms before this meeting. Overseer, she said carefully, our people number in the billions. We need time to prepare, to gather supplies, to 6 months, Vexler repeated, his voice flat. This council has spoken. The chamber doors opened. The humans were dismissed like children from a classroom. Day one walked out with the others, his mind already racing through impossible calculations. 6 months to move billions of people across half the galaxy. 6 months to pack up everything humanity had built over 3 centuries. 6 months before they were thrown into hell. Outside the chamber, Hannah grabbed his arm. We need to start organizing immediately, she said. Her eyes were sharp despite the fear he could see behind them. I've been studying the Outer Rim data. It's bad, but there's nothing there, interrupted June, an old mining foreman who had worked on asteroids for 40 years. His face looked like cracked leather, scarred by decades of hard vacuum and radiation. I've seen the scans. Dead stars, poison atmospheres, radiation that'll cook you inside your suit. The council is killing us slowly. Day one raised his hand for silence. Maybe, he said quietly, but we don't have a choice. June, you start organizing the mining crews. We'll need every ship we can get. Hannah, gather your engineers. If there's even a chance of surviving out there, we need to find it. I'll handle the logistics of the evacuation. The next 6 months became a blur of activity. Humanity packed up their lives into cargo containers and loaded them onto ships. Some people cried as they left their homes. Others looked relieved, as if exile was better than living under the council's shadow. Day one worked 18-hour days, coordinating the massive exodus. His hair turned gray during those months. The council watched with cold interest. They sent monitors to ensure humans didn't take anything deemed council property, which turned out to be almost everything valuable. Humans were allowed their clothes, basic tools, and older ships. Everything else stayed behind. Hannah used the chaos to her advantage. While council monitors watched the main evacuation, she quietly collected data on the Outer Rim that the council had marked as classified. She found old survey reports, radiation readings, and geological scans. Most of it was grim, but she noticed something odd. The radiation patterns in certain asteroid fields didn't match any known element. The surveys had marked it as scanning error and moved on. June gathered every working ship he could find. Many were old mining vessels, held together with patches and prayers. The council laughed at humanity's ragtag fleet, But June knew these ships. They were tough, built to survive in harsh conditions. If anything could handle the outer rim, these could. On the last day, Day 1 stood on the observation deck of the lead ship, watching as the final transport departed from Earth. The planet looked small and blue behind them, growing smaller by the minute. Millions of humans had already left on earlier ships. This was the last group, the stragglers who had nowhere else to go. Vexter's final message came through on the main channel. "Humanity," he said, his voice carrying across the fleet. "You go now to the outer rim. May you find what you deserve there." The transmission ended with what sounded like laughter from the other council members. The journey to the outer rim took 3 weeks. As they crossed the boundary, the stars changed. They looked older, dimmer. Space itself seemed darker. Sensors showed radiation levels that made the crew nervous. Hannah spent the trip analyzing the data she had stolen, her eyes growing wider with each discovery. When they finally arrived at the first designated settlement zone, everyone gathered at their viewports to look. What they saw made strong people weep. A planet covered in storms that never ended, orbiting a dying star. Asteroids that glowed with some kind of internal heat. Gas clouds that pulsed with radiation. But Hannah was smiling. She had found something in the scans, something the council had missed. Those strange radiation patterns weren't errors. They were real, and they might be exactly what humanity needed to survive. Day 1 gave the order. The ships moved forward into the darkness. Behind them, the core worlds and their arrogant rulers grew distant. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and possibly death. But it was theirs. For the first time in centuries, humanity would live or die on their own terms. The outer rim swallowed them whole. 7 years had passed since the exile began, and humanity was dying. Not all at once, not in some dramatic battle, but slowly, colony by colony. Day 1 kept a list of failed settlements on his personal tablet. The numbers grew every month. New Hope Colony, destroyed by a solar flare. Freedom Station, abandoned after their water recyclers failed. Sanctuary World, evacuated when the ground itself turned toxic. Out of the original 100 colonies, only 10 remained functional. The death toll stood at 40 million and climbing. Every day brought new challenges that would have seemed impossible back in the core worlds. But something strange was happening too. The survivors were changing. Hannah stood in her laboratory, built inside a hollowed asteroid designated Station 7. Around her, chunks of crystalline material glowed with soft blue light. She hadn't slept in 2 days, running test after test on the mysterious formations they'd found. Her team thought she was obsessed. They were right. "This shouldn't exist," she muttered, holding a crystal up to the scanner. "The energy density is impossible. Normal matter can't store this much power without breaking apart." Her assistant, a young man named June's nephew, who everyone just called Young June, looked over her shoulder. "But it does exist. We've got tons of it floating around out here. The question is, can we use it?" Hannah smiled, the kind of smile that made people nervous because it meant she was about to suggest something dangerous. "Watch this." She connected the crystal to a standard power cell, the kind used in everything from flashlights to small ships. The moment the connection completed, the cell's charge indicator jumped from 20% to full capacity in seconds. Then it kept climbing, past full, into ranges the gauge wasn't designed to measure. Young June stepped back. "That's not possible." "The outer rim doesn't care about possible," Hannah said. "These crystals form under extreme radiation and gravitational stress. They're like natural batteries, except they store 100 times more power than anything we've ever made. If we can harvest these safely, we solve our energy crisis overnight." While Hannah worked on her crystals, Taemin was solving a different problem. The former military commander had been assigned to protect the scattered colonies. But traditional tactics didn't work in the Outer Rim. Space here was too chaotic, too unpredictable. Asteroid fields shifted without warning. Radiation storms appeared from nowhere. Normal military formations just got people killed. So Taemin threw away the rulebook. He trained his pilots to fly in ways that would have gotten them court-martialed in the core worlds. They learned to use radiation storms as cover, to hide in asteroid shadows, to navigate by instinct when sensors failed. His ships were mostly old mining vessels, armed with whatever weapons they could salvage. But his crews were becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. Again, Taemin shouted across the training channel. 3 small ships dove through an asteroid field, weaving between rocks at speeds that made veteran pilots nervous. One ship clipped an asteroid, sending it spinning, but the pilot corrected and kept flying. Better. But in a real fight, that mistake costs lives. Run it again. The pilots groaned but obeyed. Taemin was harsh, but fair. Everyone knew he pushed them so hard because he'd already lost too many people to the Outer Rim's dangers. Every pilot who graduated his training program had a better chance of survival. In the agricultural domes of Station 3, Yuna was working her own kind of magic. The plants she'd brought from the core worlds had died within months, unable to adapt to the harsh conditions. So she'd started experimenting, exposing seeds to the Outer Rim's radiation in controlled doses, crossbreeding different species, trying combinations that traditional botanists would have called insane. Most of her experiments failed. The plants grew twisted and wrong, or didn't grow at all. But some survived. More than survived, they thrived. She developed a strain of wheat that actually needed high radiation to photosynthesize properly. It produced grain with 3 times the nutritional value of normal wheat, and it glowed faintly in the dark. People won't want to eat glowing food, her supervisor had warned. Yuna had shrugged. Then they can starve. This works. This keeps us alive. That's what matters. Word of these innovations spread through the surviving colonies. Ships began making regular runs between settlements, sharing resources and knowledge. Jin, now in his 60s and moving slower than he used to, coordinated the mining operations. His crews harvested the strange crystals Hana needed, using techniques developed specifically for the Outer Rim's extreme conditions. The settlements started calling themselves the Rimward Alliance, though it was barely organized at first. Just survivors helping each other stay alive. But slowly, year by year, something was building. A network. A community. A people forged in fire. Day One watched it all happen from his office on Station 1, now officially called Alliance Central. He'd aged badly in 7 years. The stress had carved deep lines in his face, and his hands shook when he was tired. But his eyes were still sharp, and he saw what others missed. Humanity wasn't just surviving anymore. They were adapting, evolving, becoming something new. Chancellor, Youngjun said, entering the office. Day One had been elected leader of the Alliance, though he insisted the title was temporary. We received another transmission from the core worlds. Council ships detected our settlements. They're sending a message. Day One pulled up the transmission. Vexter's face appeared on the screen, looking mildly surprised. So, the overseer said, some of you survived. Unexpected. The council assumed you would all be dead by now. We will update our records. Do not attempt to return to the core worlds. You are still exiled. The transmission ended. Day One found himself smiling. 7 years ago, that message would have filled him with rage. Now it just seemed sad. Vexter still thought humanity was weak, still thought they were victims to be pitied. The overseer had no idea what was really happening out here in the darkness. Send no reply, Day One ordered. Let them think what they want. We have work to do. That night, Day One stood at his viewport, watching ships move between asteroids. Lights glowed from the colonies, powered by harness crystals. Patrol ships flew patterns that Taman had designed. Food production was finally exceeding consumption, thanks to Yuna's mutant crops. The death rate had stopped climbing. For the first time since the Exile, more humans were being born than dying. The outer rim was still harsh. People still died in accidents, from radiation, from equipment failures. But they were learning, adapting, surviving. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Day One wondered what would happen when humanity stopped just surviving and started truly living out here. What would they become then? What would the Council think when they realized their discarded waste had become something they couldn't control? He didn't know. But he looked forward to finding out. Captain Sung-ho didn't believe in luck, but standing on the bridge of the Perseverance, staring at the sensor readings, he was starting to reconsider. His ship had been exploring the deepest parts of the outer rim for 6 months, mapping regions too dangerous for regular patrols. They'd found nothing but dead rocks and dying stars. Until today. "Captain," his sensor operator called out, "you need to see this. Something big, drifting at coordinates 97 Alpha." Sung-ho moved to the console. The screen showed a massive structure, easily 20 kilometers long, shaped like nothing he'd ever seen. It wasn't a natural formation. The edges were too precise, the angles too deliberate. How did we miss this on long-range scans? "We didn't miss it, sir. It's surrounded by some kind of interference field. We only detected it because we flew close enough for visual confirmation." Maya, the ship's xenarchaeologist, leaned over the display. Her eyes went wide. "Those design patterns," she whispered. "I've seen them before in old records. This is precursor architecture. Real precursor technology, just floating out here." The precursors were legend. Ancient beyond measure, they built wonders across the galaxy millions of years ago, then vanished. The Council claimed to have studied precursor ruins, but most of their findings were classified. Now humanity had found one of their structures, untouched and unexplored. Sung-ho made his decision quickly. "Prepare a boarding team. Mina, you're coming with us. I want to know what's inside that thing." 3 hours later, Sung-ho stood in the airlock, suited up and checking his equipment. Mina was beside him, practically vibrating with excitement. 4 security personnel completed the team, including a nervous young woman named Sora, who transferred to exploration duty after getting bored with patrol work. The structure's hull was pitted with age but intact. They found an entrance that responded to Mina's tools, sliding open with a whisper of ancient machinery. Inside, emergency lighting flickered to life, casting everything in pale blue illumination. "It still has power," Sora breathed. "After millions of years, it still has power." They moved through corridors that could have held starships, past chambers filled with equipment they couldn't identify. Everything was pristine, preserved perfectly in the vacuum. Mina recorded everything, her hands shaking with excitement as she scanned symbols carved into the walls. "This is a research station," she said, reading the symbols. "The precursors used it to study dark space phenomena. But there's something else here, something about preservation and protection." They found it in the central chamber. A massive data core, still active, surrounded by technology that made their own computers look like stone tools. And standing guard over it was a holographic interface, waiting for millions of years for someone to activate it. Mina approached carefully, studying the controls. "I think I can access this," she said. "The precursor language isn't too different from ancient council script. Give me time." Hours passed as Mina worked. The rest of the team explored, finding manufacturing facilities, weapons testing chambers, and storage bays filled with equipment that still functioned perfectly. Sung-ho reported their findings back to the Perseverance, knowing this discovery would change everything. Finally, Mina succeeded. The data core activated fully, and information flooded across displays in a language that shifted and changed until it became readable. Mina's translator worked frantically to keep up. "Oh no," Mina whispered, reading the data. "Oh no, what is it?" Sung-ho asked. "The precursors knew," she said, her voice hollow. "They knew their civilization was corrupting, becoming arrogant and cruel. So they built this place and others like it, hiding their most important technology in the harshest parts of space. They wanted to preserve their knowledge for whoever came next, whoever was worthy of finding it." More data scrolled past. Manufacturing techniques that could revolutionize production. Weapon systems that made current technology look primitive. Medical advances that could extend human lifespans. And most importantly, something called the quantum slipstream drive. A method of faster-than-light travel that could cross the galaxy in days instead of months. "There's more," Mina continued, her face pale inside her helmet. "Warnings. The precursors left warnings about what happens when civilizations grow too powerful without wisdom to guide them. They describe corruption, stagnation, and eventually collapse. They're describing the Council. They predicted exactly what the Council would become." Sung-ho stared at the data flowing across the screens. In this one structure, humanity had found enough knowledge to transform themselves from exiles into a galactic power. The question was what to do with it. "We need to contact Chancellor Day One," he said. "This decision is above my authority." Back on Alliance Central, Day One listened to Sung-ho's report with growing amazement. Beside him stood Hana, Taemin, and Hyan, a former Council researcher who defected to humanity 5 years ago, after witnessing the Council's treatment of smaller species. Hyan confirmed what Mina had discovered. "The precursors were brilliant," Hyan said quietly. "But toward the end, they became afraid of what they'd created. They hid their best work deliberately, making the locations hostile to discourage scavengers. The Council has been searching for sites like this for millennia. They've never found one. And we just stumbled onto it," Hana said, laughing. "The Council's trash heap turns out to be the precursor's treasure vault." "That's poetry." But Day One wasn't laughing. His face was serious as he considered the implications. "If we reveal this to the Council, they'll take it. They'll call it galactic heritage, send their fleets, and strip that station clean. We'll get nothing but their thanks, if that. If we keep it secret," Taemin said carefully, "we can use it. Study it, build with it. But that means lying to the Council about what we found." Hyan spoke up, his voice bitter. "The Council lies constantly. They've hidden precursor discoveries before, keeping the technology for themselves while telling everyone they found nothing. I've seen the classified reports. They're hypocrites." Day One looked at each of them in turn. Hana, whose crystal research could combine with precursor power systems. Taemin, who could use proprietary weapons to protect the Alliance. Hyan, who understood how the Council thought and operated. All of them waiting for his decision. Outside his window, the outer rim stretched endlessly, harsh and unforgiving. Humanity had survived here through determination and adaptation. They'd earned their place in this darkness. Now they had a choice: reveal their discovery and hope for Council mercy, or take what they'd found and secure their own future. Day One thought about Vexthur's contempt, about the 40 million humans who died in the exile, about the children growing up in the outer rim who would never know the comfort of core world life. He thought about what humanity had become out here and what they could still become. "We keep it," he said finally. "Bring that technology here, study it, integrate it into our own systems. Tell no one outside the Alliance. Captain Sung-ho, that station is now classified. Maya, you coordinate the research. Hana, Taemin, work with her. We're going to do something the Council never expected." "What's that?" Hana asked. Day One smiled. We're going to use the gift they threw away and become something they can't ignore. 4 years of secret work had transformed the Rimward Alliance into something the galaxy had never seen. Deep inside Alliance Central, Hana stood in a laboratory that would have made Council scientists weep with envy. Around her, human engineers worked alongside precursor technology, creating hybrids that surpassed both. The energy crystals are perfect, she explained to a group of visiting colony representatives. She held up a small device that glowed with internal light. Precursor power systems are incredibly efficient, but they need a stable energy source. Our crystals provide that stability and more. When we combine them, the output increases by 300%. One representative, a woman from the mining colonies, shook her head in wonder. 300%. And the council just left. All this technology floating out here? They didn't know it was here, Hana said. The precursors hid it too well. But we found it because we had nowhere else to look. Sometimes being desperate makes you thorough. In the shipyards of Station 7, Taemin watched the construction of humanity's new fleet. The ships didn't look like traditional vessels. They were sleeker, faster, built with materials that absorbed sensor scans. Precursor manufacturing techniques had allowed humans to construct ships in months that would have taken years with old methods. Sora, now a test pilot for the new designs, ran her hand along the hull of her assigned fighter. "She's beautiful," she said. "How fast?" "Faster than anything the Council has," Taemin replied. "The quantum slipstream drive is still experimental, but even our conventional engines outperform their best ships. We've also integrated weapons based on precursor designs. One of these fighters could take on 5 Council interceptors and win." Sora grinned. "When do I get to fly her?" "Tomorrow. You'll be testing the slipstream drive through the Inferno Nebula." The Inferno Nebula was a radiation storm so intense that Council ships avoided it entirely. "If you can navigate that, we'll know the technology works." The next day, Sora strapped into her fighter and launched. The cockpit was unlike anything from the core worlds, with displays that showed information in 3 dimensions and controls that responded to thought as much as touch. She flew toward the Inferno Nebula, watching the radiation levels climb to lethal ranges. "Activating slipstream drive," she said calmly. The universe seemed to twist around her ship, and suddenly she was moving through space in a way that shouldn't be possible. The radiation that would have killed her passed harmlessly through the slipstream field. She emerged on the far side of the nebula, having crossed a distance that should have taken hours in just minutes. "Control," she radioed back. "The slipstream drive is perfect. I just flew through hell and didn't feel a thing." While the military advanced, G1 was building something equally important. The new Alliance Chancellor, elected after Day 1 stepped down due to age, was a diplomat who understood that technology alone wouldn't protect humanity. They needed allies, trade partners, and most importantly, they needed the Council to underestimate them for as long as possible. G1 established trade routes to neutral stations, places where Council species and independent worlds met to do business. Human ships arrived selling exotic materials from the Outer Rim at prices that undercut Council monopolies. Strange metals, the glowing crystals Hana had discovered, and radiation-resistant materials that only existed in extreme environments. The merchants at these stations were impressed. "How do humans harvest these materials?" one asked Guan. "The radiation alone should kill anyone who gets close." G1 smiled mysteriously. "We've learned to live in places others consider impossible. It's amazing what you can do when you have no choice." Word spread. Human goods became popular because they were cheap and high quality. Some council members noticed and sent investigators, but they found nothing suspicious. Just humans trading, legally, using their assigned territory in the Outer Rim. The investigators reported back that humanity had found ways to survive through hard work and luck. Quan, the Alliance's intelligence operative, monitored Council communications from a hidden station near the boundary. His team intercepted transmissions, tracked ship movements, and gathered information. What they learned was both encouraging and concerning. "The Council thinks we're harmless," Quan reported to G1. "They see our trade ships and assume we're barely surviving, selling whatever we can find to buy food and supplies. Some Council members actually pity us." "Good," G1 said. "Let them pity us. What about military activity?" "Minimal. They've written off the Outer Rim as strategically worthless. No Council ships patrol here anymore. We're completely alone, which means completely free to do as we please." But Quan had also noticed something worrying. Strange signals from dark space, beyond even the Outer Rim. Movement that didn't match any known species. He filed reports, but without proof. There was little anyone could do except watch and wait. 3 years after finding the precursor station, the Alliance held its first full assembly. Representatives from all surviving colonies gathered on Alliance Central. The population had grown to 2 billion, births finally outpacing deaths. New colonies were being established using precursor construction techniques. Humanity was no longer dying. They were thriving. Day 1 attended the assembly, though he was nearly 70 now and walked with a cane. Hana sat beside him, her hair gray but her eyes still sharp. Tamin stood at attention near the door, ever the soldier. Around them, the people they'd led through the darkest years celebrated survival and looked toward the future. G1 addressed the assembly. 15 years ago, the Council cast us out. They called us resource-depleted, primitive, and worthless. They sent us to die in the Outer Rim, but we didn't die. We adapted. We survived. We thrived. And now we're ready for the next step." She activated a holographic display showing the new fleet, the manufacturing facilities, the colonies spreading through the Outer Rim like flowers blooming in darkness. "We've built this in secret, using technology the Council thought lost forever. We've become strong in places they considered worthless. The question now is what we do with that strength." The assembly debated for hours. Some wanted to reveal their power, to demand the Council's respect. Others preferred to remain hidden, building strength until no one could threaten them. Still others suggested returning to the core worlds as conquerors, making the Council pay for the exile. Day 1 listened to it all, then struggled to his feet. The assembly fell silent, respecting the old man who'd led them through the worst times. "I have one thing to say," he told them. "The Council made us into something they never intended. They thought exile would destroy us. Instead, it forced us to become better, stronger, more innovative. We owe them nothing, but we owe ourselves everything. Whatever we choose to do, we do it as humanity, united and unafraid." "That's all I wanted to say." He sat down to thunderous applause. G1 called for a vote, and the decision was made. The Alliance would continue building, continue trading, and continue preparing. But they would also start establishing an official diplomatic presence, not as beggars seeking readmission, but as an independent power offering partnership on equal terms. "Let the Council think we're lucky survivors," G1 said. "Let them underestimate us a little longer. Because when they finally see what we've become, I want it to take their breath away." In the shipyard, Sora and hundreds of other pilots trained on ships that could cross the galaxy in days. In the laboratories, Hana's team unlocked more precursor secrets every month. In the colonies, children grew up learning to thrive in conditions that would kill most other species. And in the dark space beyond the Outer Rim, something watched and waited. But that was a problem for another day. Humanity had been cast aside by their rulers. They'd taken the Outer Rim and made it home. Now they were ready to show the galaxy what that meant. The emergency transmission reached Alliance Central at dawn, cutting through normal communications with override protocols. Quan's face appeared on every screen, his usual calm replaced by urgency. Chancellor G1, we have a situation. The Council is under attack. G1 was in her office within minutes, still pulling on her uniform jacket. Around her, advisors gathered as Quan displayed the intelligence his team had collected. Unknown ships were pouring out of dark space, moving in ways that defied physics, attacking Council worlds with ruthless efficiency. What are they? G1 asked. We don't know, Quan admitted. They appeared 3 days ago and hit the outer Council territories. Conventional weapons barely scratched them. They're spreading fast, and the Council military can't stop them. Taemin studied the tactical displays. The Council ships are using rigid formations, textbook strategies. These attackers are chaos, hitting from unexpected angles, using the environment. The Council doesn't know how to fight like that. But we do, Hana said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. We've spent 15 years learning to survive in impossible conditions, adapting to chaos. This is what we trained for, even if we didn't know it. For 2 weeks, the Alliance watched as the Council's military crumbled. Entire fleets were destroyed. Planets were invaded. The attackers, which xenobiologists were calling parasites because of how they consumed everything in their path, pushed deeper into Council space. Refugees fled toward the core worlds, creating chaos. Then Vexter's transmission arrived. The Overseer appeared on screen, and G1 almost didn't recognize him. The arrogant ruler she remembered looked diminished, desperate. His voice carried none of its old authority. Humanity, Vexter said, each word clearly difficult for him. The Galactic Council requests your assistance. We face an enemy we cannot defeat alone. We ask that you send whatever forces you can spare to help defend against this threat. Any aid would be appreciated. The transmission ended. G1's advisors erupted in argument. Some wanted to refuse, to let the Council suffer as humanity had suffered. Others saw an opportunity to negotiate for better treatment. Still others worried about what would happen if the parasites won and turned their attention to the outer rim. G-1 made her decision quickly. We help them, she said. Not because they deserve it, but because it's the right thing to do. And because it's time the Council saw what we've become. Taemmin saluted. I'll mobilize the fleet. Within hours, the Rimward Alliance fleet assembled. Hundreds of ships, each one incorporating precursor technology and human innovation, prepared to depart. Taemin commanded from the flagship Perseverance, named after the ship that had found the precursor station. Sora led the fighter squadrons, eager to prove what she and her pilots could do. The fleet activated their quantum slipstream drives and vanished, crossing the distance to Council space in days instead of months. When they emerged near the battle zone, Council sensors detected them, but couldn't believe the readings. Ships appeared from nowhere, moving in formations that seemed impossible, broadcasting human identification codes. Vexter watched from his command center as the human fleet arrived. How many ships? He demanded. Scans show 300 vessels, Overseer. But the sensor readings don't make sense. They're moving too fast, and the energy signatures are unlike anything in our database. They're human ships, Vexter said slowly. The exiles we threw away have built a fleet that rivals our own. The first battle was over before the Council military understood what happened. Parasite ships attacked the human convoy, expecting easy prey. Instead, they encountered Sora's fighter squadron. The young pilots flew through the parasite formation like dancers, their ships moving in patterns that seemed to violate physics. Weapons powered by Hana's crystals and precursor technology cut through parasite armor like paper. Target destroyed, Sora reported calmly. Engaging next group. This is easier than flying through the Inferno Nebula, Taemin coordinated the larger battle with practiced efficiency. He'd spent years training his forces to fight in chaos, to use the environment, to think creatively. Now those skills proved devastating against an enemy the Council couldn't touch. Human ships appeared from slipstream, struck hard, and vanished before the parasites could respond. All units, focus fire on their command cluster, Taemin ordered. Show them what the Outer Rim taught us. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the parasite force was destroyed, and human casualties numbered in single digits. Council observers watched in stunned silence as the ragtag exiles they'd dismissed demonstrated military capability beyond anything they'd imagined. Bora, a young captain who'd grown up in the Outer Rim colonies, earned herself a place in history during the third battle. Her ship encountered a parasite mothership, a massive vessel that had destroyed 2 Council dreadnoughts. Standard tactics called for retreat and calling for backup. Bora did something different. Routing all power to shields and engines, she told her crew. We're going through that storm front. Captain, the radiation will fry our systems, her first officer protested. Council systems, yes. Ours? We were built for radiation. Trust me. Bora flew her ship directly into a radiation storm that would have killed anything from the core worlds. The parasite mothership followed, confident in its ability to withstand the radiation. But Bora's ship had been designed in the Outer Rim, built to survive conditions that made the storm look mild. She led the mothership deeper into the radiation, then activated every weapon at once. The mothership's shields failed under the combined assault of weapons, fire, and lethal radiation. It broke apart, and Bora flew her ship out the other side of the storm without a scratch. Council sensors captured everything, and the recording spread across the fleet within hours. Within 3 weeks, the tide turned. Human tactics, combined with Council resources, drove the parasites back. Taemin's fleet moved like ghosts, striking from impossible angles, using the chaos of battle to their advantage. Every engagement proved the same thing. Humanity had learned to fight in ways the Council had never imagined. Finally, G1 traveled to Nexus Prime herself, accompanied by Hana and escorted by Sora's squadron. The Council chamber where humanity had been exiled 16 years ago looked the same, but everything else had changed. Council members who'd barely noticed humans before now stared with something approaching awe. Vexthur met them in the same chamber. He looked old now, worn down by the war and the humiliation of needing help from those he'd cast out. Chancellor G1, he said formally, the Galactic Council thanks humanity for its assistance. Your forces have been instrumental in our defense. We're pleased we could help, G1 said calmly. Then she played her final card. Before we continue this discussion, I'd like to show you something. She activated a holographic recording. It showed Day 1, recorded months before his death, sitting in his office on Alliance Central. The old man looked directly at the camera, his eyes tired but satisfied. Overseer Vexthur, Day 1's recording said, when you exiled us, you thought you were throwing away garbage. You believed the Outer Rim would destroy us. Instead, it made us stronger. We learned to survive in conditions that would kill your people. We adapted technologies you thought lost. We became something you never imagined because we had no choice. So I want to thank you. Thank you for exiling us. Thank you for forcing us to become better. Thank you for giving us the gift of independence. We wouldn't be who we are without your contempt. The recording ended. The council chamber was absolutely silent. Vexthur's face showed a mixture of emotions, none of them pleasant. He understood what the message meant. Humanity didn't need the council's approval anymore. They'd built their own power, their own identity, and they'd done it in the wasteland the council had thrown them into. G1 spoke into the silence. The Rimward Alliance offers the Galactic Council a new relationship. not as subjects seeking readmission, but as equals offering partnership. We'll share our technology, our resources, and our military support. In exchange, we want full recognition as an independent power, with all the rights and privileges that entails. And if we refuse? Baxter asked quietly. Then, we'll maintain our current borders and continue developing the Outer Rim, G1 said. We don't need you anymore, Overseer. We're offering partnership because cooperation benefits everyone. But we'll survive either way. We've proven that. The Council debated for 3 days. In the end, they had little choice. Humanity had saved them from destruction and demonstrated capabilities that rivaled or exceeded Council technology. The vote was close, but it passed. The Rimward Alliance was officially recognized as an independent galactic power. G-1 stood at the viewport of her ship, watching Nexus Prime fall away behind them. Hannah joined her, smiling at the younger woman. Day One would have loved to see this, Hannah said. He did see it, G1 replied. Maybe not with his eyes, but he knew it would happen. He believed in what we could become. Back in the Outer Rim, children played in colonies that now thrived instead of merely surviving. Ships moved freely through space that had once been considered cursed. The energy crystals that Hannah had discovered powered homes, factories, and vessels across human space.